Hello, thanks for watching. In this video, I'm creating some floral cards featuring the flowers, the paper posy flowers that I made in my last video. So if you're curious about how I made those flowers, I'll go ahead and link that video in the top for you. So for this video, I'm going to create two cards. The first card is going to feature this yellow flower and this sort of cream flower, and then I'll have a second card that features the peach coral flower that I made in my previous video. So to build this card out, I'm going to be cutting out some additional pieces from the paper posy die set. So some additional flowers and then some various leaves in different shades of green, and then the sort of sprig stems in another shade, and then the centers of those additional flowers. And this will sort of fill out the bouquet of our first flower. So I'll go ahead and die cut all those pieces out, and then I'm going to adhere the flowers together. So I have 2 layers of petals for each of the flowers and then the various centers. On my card base, I am going to line up this card panel die cut, so it creates some diagonal stitch lines, and I'm going to die cut that directly into my card base. So off screen, I went ahead and stamped and die cut this banner that says "You're Amazing." And now I'm going to use liquid adhesive to adhere these tiny little leaves that I trimmed off of a larger branch stem just directly behind these blue flowers. And then I'm going to adhere these bigger leaves, which I also ran through the coordinating embossing folder for this set. I didn't show that, but if you're curious about how that embossing folder looks, I encourage you to check out that video where I made the flowers, since I used that embossing folder in that set. So I'm just adding all of my pieces here to fill out my bouquet of flowers with the different leaves and sprigs, using both liquid adhesive and in some cases foam tape to create some dimensions on the different flowers and leaves, just to create sort of this bouquet that fills out the card base. And once all of those pieces have been adhered, I'm going to glue my banner directly onto the edges of those petals there. So it's sort of already naturally popped up from the flowers. And this is the final card featuring those 2 paper posy flowers that I created in my last video that I've sort of filled out with various other flowers and greetings, and this "You're Amazing" banner sentiment. In my next card, I'm going to create a background using this Mod Turnabout stamp. So at first, I'm going to line up my stamp with the guide. And this one's pretty easy to line up because it is pretty geometric, so it doesn't take too much. Some of the other turnabouts can be a little tricky to line up, but this one was pretty straightforward. Then I'm going to line up the guide with the turnabout jig, and I'm going to put that into my MISTI right in the corner. And once I get that all lined up, I'm going to close my MISTI, which will capture the stamp. And then I'll be able to remove the guide, and add my card base onto the jig, which is sticky. And there's some 4.25 by 5.5 lines to show you sort of if you want to do a single card base. And I'm doing this directly onto my card panel, and I'm gonna do, first starting with the lighter tone, I'm gonna stamp that one twice just to make sure that it looks pretty good, and I'm gonna use my stamp tool to help apply even pressure across the stamp to get a good stamp impression. This is my first time using the stamp, so I don't know that the stamping turned out as well as I would have liked. It does sort of have that weird textured look when you use a stamp for the first time. And then I'm gonna turn my jig 1/4 turn and add my second color. And I'm only gonna do 2. I don't want to fill the full background. I want to make it sort of a partially filled background, so I'm only going to do 2 colors and the 1 turn. Next, I'm going to add my sentiment. So I wanted to have my sentiment curve around the flower, the single flower that I'm using for this card. So in order to do that, I am lining up this circle die, which is about the size of my flower, and I'm going to tape it down on my card base. And then I'm going to add my stamp sentiment on the door of my Misty, and then I'm going to slowly line it up, trying to match that curve of that flower, or of that die cut, I mean, so that it will sort of curve around my flower. And this sentiment did not want to cooperate. I kept sticking it in, and then it would kind of flip back into its old place, like each corner, so it took quite a while to sort of get it as close as I possibly could to where I wanted it to be. And once I was satisfied with it where it was positioned, I removed the die piece and just checking one last time, and then I'm gonna add my ink onto my sentiment. And because it kept kind of shifting out of place, you'll see I'm trying to like push it a little bit more, and then it falls back. I didn't think I'd be able to stamp a very good impression, like, and do multiple stamps. So I was really hoping the first, and luckily second stamp kind of, it stayed in place and it stamped okay. But this was a little bit tricky and time-consuming process, and this stamp really did not want to cooperate with me. But I think it turned out ultimately okay. And then to fill out the rest of this card, I'm going to cut out some various leaves and sprigs, much like I did on the last card, and various colors of cardstock. I'll run those leaves through my embossing folder as well, just to give them the line dimension. And then I'll start to fill out the bouquet of my card. I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the back of this flower, and I'm only going to do it towards the center so that I can easily tuck those leaves behind it. And I'm going to nestle it right into that sentiment. That was the whole purpose of having that sort of die as a guide, and make sure that I could, have the little sentiment kind of curve around the flower. And then I'm going to start adhering all of my pieces. I overdid it on the glue a little bit on this one, so I used another die cut piece to mop up some of that excess, and just applied it onto my other leaves, so that none of my glue went to waste. And I'll add the last few pieces, this little sprig, and then the last little bits of leaves, to finish out this sort of little bouquet. And there is the finished card with a sentiment that's sort of curved, saying your feelings are valid, and I think it turned out really nicely. Thanks for watching. If you want to see how I created the flowers, check out that top video, and also I'll have another video featuring these paper posy flowers as well.